This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 145 of Healthy Critters Radio on the Horse Radio Network. Healthy Critters Radio is brought to you by Biostar US. You can find them online at biostarus.com.
On today's show, we share tips for reducing rider anxiety. Critter of the show is the raccoon. In Critter Nutrition, we focus on balancing the Vata Dosha for horses and dogs during the fall and winter months. And in Coffee Klatch, we discuss making a plan. Listen in. Hi, I'm Tigger.
Hey, I'm Coach Jen. Patty's not here today. Thanks for joining us. We cannot get you two in the same room together anymore.
I know. It's so funny. This year, we've had more missing show misses of our schedules not exactly synchronizing. But hopefully this is the last one of the year that Patty and I and Jennifer aren't all together, the dynamic trio.
It's not the same without all three Stooges.
You know, it is. Sure. Exactly.
It's just not the same. It's just not the same. So this is the part of the show where either I ask Patty and Tigger some probing questions and make them squirm a little bit, or we catch up on their latest adventures. And I think this time we get to catch up on some canine adventures at the Tigger household, don't we?
Well, yes. My oldest dog, Kemosabe, went in for his regular health check, and I was telling the vet that he's having trouble eating his raw bones, and he's just licking them more than like gnawing on them. And so he goes through his mouth and he says, "Oh, he's got some gingivitis." And I went, okay. So I made an appointment for him to get the gingivitis work done, which is a little bit of, I guess, oral surgery. And I've never had a dog I'm 68 years old. Not a dog I've ever owned has ever had to have oral surgery. So this was new territory for me. So I drop him off, and then they, call me, and they had to extract 2 back molars which were loose, and, they didn't want them to abscess. So that was kind of a shocker. So I go and pick him up, and, they give you this, laundry list of things you have to do and give and blah, 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 soft food, da-da-da. Well, Sabi absolutely refused to eat last night after his surgery. And I thought, okay, well, it's the anesthesia and blah, blah, blah. And I was worried because I had to give him this antibiotic and he didn't have anything in his stomach. So I literally crammed down some raw food. And then I thought, well, this morning, he'll be back to his normal self. Nope. Wouldn't touch it, wouldn't take it, wouldn't smell it, nothing. And I'm like, okay, this dog lives to eat. So clearly there's a problem here. So I called the vet and just, let them know. The vet, of course, wasn't in yet. So I went and got some Pepsid thinking, well, maybe he's got an upset stomach. So I give the Pepsid and the vet calls back and I tell him that I'm trying the Pepsid. And he said, I think it's pain and not an upset stomach. But, you can give the Serena, which is an anti-nausea pill that I just happen to have on hand. And you need to give a stronger pain med. So I tested Sabi after about an hour after the Pepsid and still nothing. Well, I'm like a Jewish mother with my dogs, my horses. If they don't eat, I'm like, okay, Houston, we have a problem. And, Sabi, no treats, no nothing. I'm like panicked. So I give them the Serena. and then I give him a more serious painkiller. And what I noticed was within about a half an hour, he was like out. I mean, he was out, but in a comfortable out, like he was on his side, his legs were stretched out. And up until that point, he'd been sleeping, but more hunched.
Yes.
And so tonight I thought, okay, I just gave him a little cooked food in a nice broth. And at first he went, and I thought, oh God, next step, emergency vet, get fluids or something. And then I just put some in my hand, and then he, took a tongue out and went, oh, not so bad. Took another. And then I just put the bowl down, then he ate everything up. So I think we are not over the hump, but he's going to be on medication for a few days.
So you cracked the nut, though.
I did crack the nut, and it's horrible when they don't eat, and he had these. His eyes looked really sad, but everything else about him was normal. He went outside. He was functional. He came and wanted, his head scratched. I mean, all the behavior things were normal.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they can really let you know in a more dramatic way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's so stoic. The only thing that he really showed me was the way he was sleeping and not eating. But I'm happy to report Kemosabe is eating, and I expect him to have a very good appetite tomorrow. And we will file this in the glad it's over category.
Yes. Oh my goodness, how stressful for everybody.
Yeah, except for the other dogs who were like, what's wrong with you? And can I have his food?
Yeah, well, they're just trying to help, right?
Don't leave anything to waste.
No.
Because in our house, anything that's left over goes to the chickies. So we have a complete system. I mean, there is no.
You have a closed system.
We have a totally closed system.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, speaking of a stressful few days, our roundtable today is tips for reducing rider anxiety at home and at shows.
Yes.
What was the spark that brought this one on?
It was you. The pictures you posted on Facebook of taking your horse to a dressage show at WEC, and even though you didn't say anything about anxiety, the photos and Nigel is a challenging thoroughbred, so I just put two and two together and went, rider anxiety, something that I think 99% of us all experience in some form or another. Mm-hmm. It can be, anxiety, performance anxiety. It can be a fear because the horse has either dumped us once or twice, or is a jackass in the warm up, or we know the judge, or the judge is held.
I cannot imagine if I knew the judge. Oh, how that would be awful. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
No.
that's hard. Or a judge that we hold in high esteem, that you want to put in a nice test for. And then you get, very anxious that you're going to kind of blow it. So over my show career, I have learned ways to manage my anxiety, or anxiety of getting on a new horse. Sometimes when you're trying a horse to buy, that could be a very anxious period because you don't know the horse. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever been bucked off or thrown or, summarily planted,
yeah.
especially as an adult, you go, okay, I want to make sure that this horse is going to, behave under tack. And I have tried horses that there was one in Europe, And the agent I was with, he actually wanted me to get on this horse, not for me, but for a client he had. He said, Terry, will you get on this horse? I said, sure. And I saw I watched the horse being ridden, and I climbed on and put my leg on the horse, and the horse basically said, yeah, no. And I went, yes. And I just really closed my legs and just gave a little bit of a spur. I mean, a little bit. And that horse went bronc. He sunfished in the air, and I could feel myself my balance was going to the right. And I remember thinking to myself, I am not falling off in front of these Germans. I am not going to do it. And I managed to right myself in the air and get in the middle of them again. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then afterwards they were like, wow, he's a hell of a bucker, isn't he? And I'm like, well, yeah, but they were looking at this horse for, the agent was looking at this horse for an older amateur rider.
Uh-oh. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. So
maybe
anyway.
he wasn't a good older amateur rider fit.
Oh my gosh, no. Then he tried to run away with me.
Oh my goodness. There you go. They were outed.
He just decided to take off. Oh, it was pretty funny. Anyway, anxiety is a big problem. And it is, obviously horses have anxiety. And when riders have anxiety, it feeds the anxiety in the horse. And some horses are really good at, kind of tuning out the rider and go, you can be as nervous as you want. I know what my job is. Those horses for me are the saints of the equine world.
Yeah.
God bless them. Yeah. I've never owned one, but I certainly imagine that must be wonderful to have. Wow. So I have, over the years, come up with things that I find helpful. Mm-hmm. So, but first I would ask, Jennifer, what do you do for your anxiety? Or do you do anything?
Do I do anything? My anxiety centers around self-inflicted need for perfection. I've got to get it all right. I can't make any mistakes.
Oh, boy.
And that's self-induced. That's just me. And I can't help it. So that's where my anxiety comes in more than anything else. And it's something that I've only very, 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 the past 90 days, started to wrestle with. Thank you, Melina. So, and I think the first thing is, what is because a lot of people focus on what causes the anxiety. The horse show, or my horse is nervous, that causes me to be anxious. What I had to focus on is where my anxiety was focused. What was I anxious
about?
Because there can be anxious, because I always associate anxiety with fear. And that wasn't something I've really dealt with so much. It's like, no, I know what fear feels like, and this isn't it. When Nigel puts his head between his knees and bucks, there's a little bit of fear, but for the most part, that's not there. So that was really for me to finally realize that the reason I am anxious and I have that whole butterflies in your stomach, can't sleep, nervous energy thing is my brain is going 90 miles an hour trying to go through every imaginable scenario and making sure I have every single base covered so they don't make any mistakes.
Wow, that's exhausting.
That was exhausting, exactly. So I came to that, it's like, oh, okay, that's light bulb moment now that I'm 50-something. What the next step was, okay, well, now how do I help to negate some of that? I'm always going to have it. It's part of my being. How can I negate some of that? So that is something we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show.
Gotcha.
Talk about tying it all together. So I think that's something that folks, maybe somebody who has been wrestling with the anxiety alligator for a while,
Mhm.
it might be because where you think your anxiety is coming from isn't really it. Or if you have your anxiety, you think it's directed towards north, it might be directed towards west. So maybe think a little bit further
Yep.
outside your box, and you might be able to come to grips with some more of it.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So how about that, eh?
I discovered in my journey that I learned more from the bad tests than I ever learned from the good tests. So
Yeah, but sometimes you don't want to learn. Sometimes you just want to feel good and get an ice cream.
yeah, but that really helped. That helped my anxiety. Because if I could look at it as a win-win. Okay, so I have a bad test, but I'll learn something. I have a great test, I'll feel fabulous about it. So I have nothing to lose. I win in both cases.
You're right. You have nothing to lose.
So that helped me just mentally be able to kind of ride the horse I had that day. Not the horse I wanted to have, not the horse that he was yesterday, what I have in the show ring.
There you go. Yeah, that is a very interesting point of view, that if the test is great, I'm going to feel fabulous.
Yep.
If the test is less than great, if I'm doing this correctly, I will be learning things. I will have learned that X worked, Y didn't work. I've learned that my horse really genuinely does have a problem with scary plastic rails, and I didn't know that before, so you've learned.
Yep.
So either way, you still win.
Yes.
Cool, I like it.
Hello.
Hetty!
Hello. Are these all my friends, or are people taking time off again?
People are taking time off again.
I'm beginning to feel like I should have a vacation if everyone is going on them.
Well, would you like one?
Yes.
Okay.
We will arrange for Hedwig to have a vacation. We will do it.
I want the most wonderful vacation.
Uh-oh. Does it come with a jet?
Well, of course, a jet will be required for me to go on my vacation. You certainly cannot expect me to vacation at home. I do not staycation.
No, of course not. Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, Hedwig, because our question for the day has to do with anxiety. And we all know that dogs are extremely perceptive when it comes to how their human servants are feeling. And we were wondering, what is it that makes your human servant anxious?
Being alive.
Oh, my.
Failing and being alive while failing. Those are mainly it. Being alive and failing. And she fails, so, you know.
And how is it, Hedwig, that you and the other Pomeranians help out your human when she is busily being anxious about failing?
Well, I mean, I like to indicate the many ways in which she has failed already, because I feel like that's just a good way for her to realize that she's still here, failing and failing and failing, but still here. And so, you know, she could persevere and try not to be quite so useless all the time. I feel that's very encouraging.
Oh, I see. So by pointing out how she has failed in the past and the fact that she's still here, so what if you fail? Just, you're still here, so what if you fail? So you're teaching her to be apathetic. I like it.
No, I think you're missing my approach here. I like to detail the many ways in which she has failed. And then I hope to, you know, in doing so, push her toward achievement.
By pointing
Not
out how
apathy.
by pointing out all the things she has not yet achieved.
And the many times she's tried and failed. It's important to really go through the whole thing, because it's not that she doesn't try. Sometimes she does. She's just terrible at things. And so the failures just accrue.
I see.
This is why I don't have a Pomeranian. An Australian Shepherd would say, "You're the most wonderful thing. I don't care if you have failed or you think you're worthless or you're feeling badly. I love you."
Yes, that's the soft bigotry of low expectations.
So how anxious would your human have to become for you, or perhaps Mustard Seed, Mustard Seed being your sibling, by the way, for those who are not familiar with Hedwig's family. Yes. How terribly, terribly anxious would she have to be before one of the Pomeranians would cuddle up and say, "We love you anyway"?
Oh, this is Mustard Seed. That is not going to happen. What? The way I like to go about things is I say, "Look, Biggin, you're oversized, you're funny shaped, you don't really have a suit that's proper, and you're kind of irking on me. So if you could just go out of the room, remember, safe social distancing is 8 feet from your Pomeranian. That would be amazing. And then if you happen to have a snack like a wonton, I love wontons, maybe you could hand it over and then just go do something else. That would work out really well for everyone." Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Mustard Seed. Wow, Mustard Seed came on and chatted with us for a little bit.
That's a first.
You're really fortunate, huh?
We are very fortunate. We feel so very privileged. I think I like your voice even more than Hedwig's.
Yeah. Who could blame you? I'm adorable. My face is a tiny bit misshapen due to some skull damage from my whole puppy mill past, but I am so cute and I have tiny tusks.
Well, we love you and your tiny tusks, and we love Hedwig, despite the fact that you're not quite willing to return it, but we'll keep working on it. And thanks for hanging out with us, Pomeranians.
Bye.
The critter of the show is the raccoon. And raccoons are just one of my personal favorite wild animals. I had a blue heeler that I named Rocky Raccoon because he kind of had a raccoon face, the mask, and he was long-haired and he had a actual tail, and he just was very raccoonish. So I'd sing him the Rocky Raccoon song from the Beatles. And we have a lot of raccoons here. The dogs tree them sometimes. And last summer, a baby raccoon was left by its mother out by one of my trees. And I waited waited for the mother to come get it. And it was getting dark and I was worried. And so I brought it in, and luckily I had gloves on, and I got this baby formula, and I'm trying to feed it, and it didn't want to eat. And then it hissed at me and made like it was going to bite me. And I went, "Okay, alrighty." So I took it back out to the tree, and I checked like 2 or 3 hours later, it was gone. So Mama came back. Anyway, I find that raccoons are fascinating. I love the fact that they're thieves. I love their cleverness. But I've just learned a whole lot about raccoons, picking them for breed of the show. They are native through most of North America, but they've also emerged in parts of Europe and Japan. Not interesting. They hitched a ride, I guess, on some ships. They're omnivores. They will eat human food. They like to eat birds, which I didn't know. Eggs, fish, and shellfish. They eat frogs, fruit, insects, nuts, and seeds, and they eat snakes.
Huh.
They're nocturnal in nature. They're most active in spring, summer, and fall, and they sleep in their dens for most of the winter. I did not know they were, they hibernated like a bear does. Reproduction begins in late winter. The females give birth to 1 to 6 kits in April or May, and then they separate after a year. But raccoons, as adults, they live in communities of 4 to 5 raccoons in like a tree stump or a den for protection against predators. They communicate with each other using over 200 different sounds and 12 to 15 different calls.
Really? Huh.
Very interesting.
I didn't know they had vocalizations that
I
that
didn't
many,
either.
Yeah.
They're, of course, great climbers, as anybody who's ever treated a raccoon knows. They are... they can carry some bacterial diseases and parasites, leptospirosis, salmonella, roundworm, and rabies. But there's only been one recorded human death from raccoon rabies in the United States. So it's not all that common. Raccoons will rinse their food in water. And when there's no water close by, a raccoon will still rub the food to remove debris. The purpose of the raccoon's black mask is to reduce glare, which helps them see better in the dark. Sadly, raccoons only live 2 to 3 years in the wild.
Really?
Yep, but a raccoon can live up to 20 years in captivity.
I would not have put them with that short of lifespan, because I always envisioned them being kind of a tough little character, you know.
Me too. There's I don't know if it's a YouTube video. It's old, maybe 10 years old, but this raccoon opening this sliding glass door to get to the cat food of this person's house, and it's the funniest thing I have ever seen. And the cat is just staring at the raccoon, and the raccoon is like, "Yeah, what do you want?" And just dives into the cat food, and then takes his lumpy little body and goes back outside. And that's what I love about them. I love that they're opportunists and they're clever, and yeah, they're not very big. They're only a foot tall, but when they puff themselves up, they seem really big.
Yeah.
They only weigh 14 to 23 pounds, so they weigh more than a Pomeranian by a lot.
Huh. Yeah, and yet, if you were to say which is bigger, a raccoon or a Pomeranian, I'd say, well, they're probably pretty close, but considerably different.
Hugely different. And they're long, with that tail, they're 24 to 38 inches long. So, although I don't recommend a raccoon as a pet, obviously they would have a much longer lifespan if they were domesticated. But I love them. And I would love to have a pet raccoon that didn't bite me or, be unpleasant.
Yeah. That whole it's easy to get sucked in because you do see the occasional video of a cute little guy taking a carrot from somebody's hand, or one that's been domesticated or something. But you don't want to fool with a wild coon. No.
After just dealing with that baby.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm really glad I had, thick leather gloves on, but I felt so badly because it was little and it needed food. And when I tried to feed it, it was like, yeah. I was like, okay, you're going back to the tree. And luckily the mother came.
And Mama came back anyway. That's right. Mama came back anyway.
Do you have a raccoon story?
Well, I do have a raccoon story. It's not a happy one, but it is a raccoon story. Oh. Well, the field where Nigel lives, for the most part, he's an outside 24/7 guy. And the field he is in is at the far end of the property. It's only a 10-acre property, but it's long and skinny. It's like an acre wide and 10 acres long. So he's out there and it's pretty remote. So all of the wildlife hangs out in his pasture. The foxes are out there. The armadillos are out there. The raccoons are out there. Everybody is in his pasture.
Oh, wow.
And they use his water trough for everything, including washing all of the raccoon food.
Ah.
But the raccoon also discovered that occasionally Nigel will leave little drips and drabs of his breakfast or dinner near his feed bowl, and has taken up going over there and collecting the little bits of alfalfa pellet or a little oat here and there, all the good stuff. Nothing's going to waste, right?
Right.
Well, about a month ago, I was strolling out to feed Nigel his breakfast or his dinner. Don't remember which. He saw me coming and said, "Hot diggity," and he headed straight for his feed bowl, which is smack in the middle of the field, because that's the way we have both of our horses sort of trained, in that if they see us coming with food, they don't come to us. They go to the bowl where the food goes, so we don't get mugged. Well, the raccoon was still cleaning up as I strolled towards that feed bowl, and Nigel discovered this. So Nigel galloped enthusiastically to the feed bowl, and I went, wow, he's really hungry. No, he galloped enthusiastically to the feed bowl and tromped the raccoon. Just, yeah, that raccoon was history.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Because the raccoon was a mature raccoon. I'm pretty sure it was a female. Just because I've been watching her go in and out of this hole in the tree for a long time and going, yeah, she's got some kids in there maybe. And she was not afraid of anything. If I was walking down the path to the field, she was not getting out of my way. She would just stand up on her hind legs and give me the finger.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing intimidated her.
They're good at that.
Yes. Well, I guess, yeah. She didn't have time to give Nigel the finger. So,
oh my gosh.
Dispatched that raccoon. So, yeah, I'm a little bit more careful with him when he's near small dogs now.
Yes,
because he doesn't show tendencies that way. It was very out of character for him to do that. But don't get near his feed bowl at chow time, I guess, is the lesson.
Clearly. Wow, that's a heck of a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so
hopefully your horses aren't trampling raccoons in your field. And, just remember raccoons are part of our ecology and we need them. We shouldn't be.
Don't feed them, though. Don't feed them. Don't put food on your back porch for your raccoons. Let your raccoons do your raccoons a favor and give them natural habitat, not cat food.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now we're at Critter Nutrition, and we're going to talk about the Vata Dosha. And in Ayurvedic medicine, there are 3 doshas. They are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata represents air and cool and wind. So as we go into, fall, winter, that is the time of Vata. Cold and windy. So you want to start thinking about foods that will balance the cold and the wind. In other words, you want something that's more warming and circulating and drying. I mean, more moisture than drying, because wind is drying. So since we're going into a Vata season, there are some foods you can feed your horses and dogs that, or more importantly, what you need to avoid feeding them to help balance that dosha. So we generally start with fruits, and it's interesting in Ayurveda to decrease Vata, to decrease the cold and the wind and the drying. You do not feed apples raw. You feed them cooked, which is a struggle in a lot of barns.
I was going to say, how do you cook an apple for a horse?
Yeah. Well, you would look for perhaps a treat that already has has baked apples in it. Or you could, of course, cook apples yourself. But raw apple is going to increase the cool and the dry. Another alternative is applesauce because that's already cooked.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so if you give a couple tablespoons of applesauce, you're helping to reduce the wind and the cold. Bananas that are ripe, not green. So that's pretty easy to find. Just let them get ripe. Yeah. Berries are okay. Coconut is good. You can do kiwis. I know some horses love kiwis, mangoes, oranges, papaya. And these all apply to dogs as well. What you want to avoid are things like watermelon.
That's something you give in the summertime, right?
Yeah. Raw apples. So these are the things that you would want to give. Mm-hmm. When it comes to vegetables, again, you've got to think cooked carrots.
Now, again, if you're feeding, because we feed our horses a lot of carrots.
Everybody does.
Roast them in the oven. How would you cook them?
Yep. Roast them in the oven, boil them.
Okay.
Raw carrots are a problem if you want to balance Vata and you want to keep them warm. But pumpkin is good. Mm-hmm. You can feed summer squash, winter squash. For dogs, sweet potatoes will reduce Vata, and zucchini. For dogs, you want to avoid white potatoes. Anything that's sprouted. That's just too cooling.
Mm-hmm. Now, would that apply to? And I don't even know if you would feed a dog sprouted grains.
Well, there are foods, commercial foods that use sprouted grains.
Okay.
So that's why I'm mentioning it.
Okay, because I didn't even know if dogs could eat those. That's what I know about dogs. Okay.
Yeah. In the grain department, this is to me the most interesting because it goes back really to European and 19th century horse care, cooked oats, and racehorse barns, really probably up until 15 years ago, cooked their oats.
Some of them down here still do.
That's great because in the winter, that's what you want to do. You do not want to feed oats. If you're trying to balance Vata and your horse gets cold easily, is sensitive to the wind and the dryness, skin gets kind of dry, then you would want, if you're feeding oats, you would want to boil them.
Which I always figured was good for them anyway, but
yes, it's certainly easier to digest.
Yeah.
You want to stay away from barley. You want to stay away from corn.
Just to go off topic, since I've got you answering questions.
Yeah.
Is corn for a horse ever a good option? Or is it generally just speaking, just corn's not so great? I'm just curious.
I think it depends on who you talk to.
Well, yeah. You ask 5 people, you get six opinions.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
My objection to corn is it's how it's grown.
Gotcha. Right. So if you're one of those people who has a lovely garden and actually grows field corn, giving your horse a couple of tablespoons of cracked corn is
not a problem.
Cool. Okay. That's good to know.
Legumes are especially good for Vata. So this includes alfalfa.
Nigel will be so happy to hear that.
What you want to avoid are soybeans, soy flour, soy powder.
Which makes it hard because soy is such a common ingredient in manufactured feeds.
Correct.
Good
But
to know.
it's unfortunately contributing to a Vata imbalance. And I think soy is a tricky thing. The traditional way of eating soy is like miso or tofu. It's a processed soy.
Mm-hmm.
What we get in horse feeds is not.
So its nutritional content's going to be different because when you process it, that changes what your body can absorb and how it absorbs it. Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. I'm having so many light bulb moments today.
It's like writing a dressage test.
Yeah.
For dogs, because they are primarily dairy consumers, the only thing you want to avoid is frozen yogurt and powdered milk. So they can have butter, buttermilk, cheese, cottage cheese, cow's milk, ghee, all that. Fresh yogurt.
All dogs will be happy to hear that.
I know. I'll be very popular. In the nuts and seeds department, so we've got a bigger opportunity here for the horses. Almonds, coconut, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, all help balance Vata. Yeah. For dogs in the meat and egg department, avoid lamb, pork, venison, and white meat turkey.
White meat turkey? They can have the dark meat?
Yep. That's warming.
Huh.
Freshwater fish can be cooling, so you might want to stay with salmon and not go with trout. If you need to feed your dog or your horse an oil or you need a fat source, some of the best is coconut oil, hemp seed oil, camelina oil, sunflower oil. You want to avoid canola, corn, flax, and soy.
So would that also apply to flax seed, or is flax oil?
Flax seed oil.
Okay, so you can give them flax seed, but you don't want to be giving them flax oil if you're in this process of trying to balance.
Yeah, I would probably go light on the flax seed and go to chia because chia is neutral.
Aha.
But if you need to feed an oil, make sure it's not canola, corn, flax, or soy.
Good to know.
Sweeteners. This doesn't really apply so much to horses, but here's a couple of obvious ones. Artificial sweeteners, white sugar, and heated or cooked honey. Raw honey is okay, but not heated or cooked.
So whenever you buy honey at the grocery store, a lot of times it says it's been, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the same thing you do to milk.
Homogenized.
No, it's the other one.
Pasteurized.
Pasteurized. That means it's been heated, right?
Yep.
Does that count as being cooked?
Correct.
There we go. Good to know.
Heated or cooked.
So there you go. So if you get honey at the grocery store, make sure you read the small print and know what you're getting. Get
raw honey. I mean, what I'm sharing for horses and dogs applies to humans. So, Vata imbalances can tend to occur more in older humans, dogs, and horses. So dealing with Vata imbalances becomes more, I won't say important, but we need to pay more attention to it, especially with the older animals and humans. So everything that I'm sharing also applies to humans. So if you get cold easily, if you're sensitive to wind, start thinking about what you can eat that is warming. Because that's what you want to do. You want to warm the system. You don't want to keep cooling it down. So in terms of sweeteners, no artificial, no white, and no heated or cooked honey. But you can do things like maple syrup. You can do raw honey. You can do date sugar. But not white sugar, not artificial sweeteners. And artificial sweeteners can be found in the most unexpected areas, so really read your labels. Ayurvedic medicine is very strong on spices. This has a little less to do with horses and dogs as it does with humans. But what you want to avoid is horseradish, chili powder, and fenugreek. If you want to add some warming foods to your horse's diet, cinnamon is great as a way to balance Vata. Dill, fennel, ginger, turmeric, parsley, even thyme. So there are herbs and spices that you can add a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon to your horse's food to help with warming and balancing Vata. When it comes to supplements to balance Vata, yeasts are warming. So if you're looking at probiotics that are yeast probiotics, that will be warming and help balance Vata. Biostar has 2 circulation formulas that are warming, that will decrease dryness and increase circulation and warmth. That's Furnace and Circuvate. And our bio yeast, which is our probiotic yeast, that will be warming. That's a great yeast to use in the winter. I use it on my horses. It helps keep them warm. And more importantly, it helps balance the Vata wintertime. So that's a basic Vata pacifying food list. And one of my favorite sources for finding balancing foods, depending on the season, is banyanbotanicals.com. And that's a great resource if you want to learn more about Vata and Pitta and Kapha.
Real horses and real dogs are healthier, perform better, and recover more quickly on real food. That's why Biostar empowers horse and canine owners with 100% whole food nutrition, supplements, and feeding programs. Biostar products are made at their own certified non-GMO facility in Gordonsville, Virginia, using real food ingredients that are raw, freeze-dried, or dehydrated, never cooked, and are free from artificial flavors, colors, soy, corn, wheat, and molasses. The Biostar product line includes a wide range of whole food, horse and dog supplements, treats, and unique artisan poultices that embrace the ancient and traditional uses of clay and plants. Visit biostarus.com today and learn about whole foods and canine and equine nutrition so you can make the best decisions about the care and health of your horses and dogs. That's biostarus.com. Whole food nutrition the way nature intended.
Well, here we are at Coffee Klatch.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Fanfare, please. And we are going to piggyback this off of our roundtable discussion about anxiety, because I alluded to the plan. And again,
believe me, I'm in the dark, listeners. I have no idea what she's got up her sleeve.
No, you don't. This was also predicated by our trip to a dressage show Nigel and I do our best to do endurance. That's sort of our chosen discipline. We got sidetracked this summer because Nigel decided he needed to develop anhidrosis. So all work had to cease. And that his inability to work continued through September. All sorts of other things happened. We won't go into those. It's a show all by itself. But about mid-October, he got his mojo back. So I said, dang, we got to go do something. And there's a horse show all the time down here this time of year. It's just nonstop horse shows. So I said, oh, look, there's a little dressage schooling show. Let's go. Something to do. A reason to get on my horse every day, right?
Yep.
I haven't been to a dressage show in probably 30 years.
Whoa!
I gave that up a long time ago. But I thought, wow, we can do this. We've got this newly discovered, softer, more balanced, more connected horse, thanks to the regular visits from Dr. Pasteur, helping out his back. So we got set up. And I knew it would be a challenge because Nigel has a lot of triggers when he goes away from home. He doesn't travel well. So I had a plan. And as I alluded to earlier, I tend to plan and plan and plan and plan. So I got a stall the night before because, of course, I had the first ride of the day. Our horse show morning was supposed to be the chilliest morning to date in the season. It has typically been in the 80s at night. It was supposed to be in the 50s.
Ooh, big
which
difference.
makes for a spicy pony.
Yeah.
So I went the night before because I knew I'd have to get up early and ride him. So I did all of those things, and he did all the things I expected Nigel to do. He was afraid of going into the stalls. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't drink. All the things that he normally does. So none of that was a surprise. But unlike other times, thank you, Helena. I said the plan this time was not be married to the plan. And this was really, really, really hard because I
bet.
I don't just have a plan. I have 1,000 plans.
Right. Plan A, B, C, and the whole alphabet.
Yeah, that my Venn diagram is just the entire wall. No Venn diagram. And that was hard because I got there the night before. He was kind of a yutz. Rode him in the arena. He was none of the things were the plan. None of the Venn diagram matched. And I was pretty frustrated at the end of the day when I put him in his stall and went to bed in my horse trailer. Pretty frustrated. Got up in the morning, 5 o'clock, take him out to hand graze because, of course, he hadn't eaten or drank all night. We hand graze, we eat grass, we have breakfast. We get on his back at 7:30 in the morning when the sun comes up. Again, none of it is in my Venn diagram. I rode him from 7:30 to 8:30. That was our warm up because that's how much daylight we had. And when I went down the center line at A, we hadn't trotted yet. We had, because whenever I'd said trot, we bucked instead.
Aha.
Not in my plan. So about 5 minutes before she rang the bell, I finally had a light bulb moment and said, there is no plan. I'm riding my horse. I'm riding my horse inside of a dressage arena. I know my test. I know where to go. And if he needs to walk the entire test because he's so wound up that trotting, he's mentally incapable of trotting, we'll just do that. And we'll file it away, like you said, under things we've learned. Now, luck would have it that we did manage to trot in most of the places we were supposed to trot. It was funny looking, but we were trotting. But it changed how I felt about the test. It didn't change the test in the least. The test was the test was the test. He was hollow. He was upside down. He was tight. All the things that dressage horses shouldn't be when they compete, right?
Right.
Didn't change any of those things. But what it did change was how I felt when I left the arena.
Mm-hmm.
I left the arena and I said, doggone it, we did that. We rode the test in a way that made him as content to do his job as possible. The whole goal is when he goes in there, I want him to enjoy his job.
Yeah.
And he left the arena and went, oh, well that wasn't really so bad. And then the next test got a little bit better. That's a whole nother show. But I let go of the plan. So, because to me, it wasn't, well, I'm not married to my plan because I have this big Venn diagram. I have multiple plans. So that makes it okay to be married to my plan. I'm wrong. That doesn't make it okay.
That's a huge life lesson.
Huge. It was huge. And again,
Huge.
Thank you, Helena. It was huge to even realize. I didn't even realize I was doing is that whole the first step in getting better is realizing you have a problem, right?
Yeah.
It never occurred to me in all of my 50 plus years that all of that planning and those multiple plans, it's the same thing as making one plan and being married to it. It's not any different.
No.
It didn't change how the horse performed.
Nope.
Didn't change how I rode. Well, maybe it did change how I rode a little bit because mental is part of how you rode. But it changed how I felt at the end of the day. I didn't have that whole, ugh, why do I even do this?
Do this. Yeah, it fits right in with my, it's a win-win.
Exactly. And when you said that, I went ding, 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 ding. That goes right next to it.
Yeah.
And
It's
again,
all how we language stuff.
Yeah, and people have been telling me that for years. It's, well, you learn from when things don't go well. You learn from things. Well, it's like, yes, I do learn. But it was always a case of I learned things, but it's that negative self-talk. I learned negative things. I learned what didn't work. I learned what didn't like. I didn't, negative. This time I learned what did. What did do well was getting to K when I needed to do a walk to trot transition and just saying to myself, are we going to trot? And waiting to see if he did. Well, he did, because he's particularly when he's wound up, he's that sensitive that if I think about trot, he starts to trot. He's one of those guys. And he did, but I let the choice to him to decide whether or not he wanted to trot or if he needed to keep walking, because he knows that when I think trot, that doesn't mean buck.
Right.
But if I put my leg on him and say, you will trot, if we're in that state of mind, then I know it does create the buck. But until that day, that wasn't going to happen at a horse show. Just wasn't going to happen. So you taught me something more. More light bulb moments, Tigger. More.
It's the great. I think that's one of the gifts of competing is that you do get these lessons, and sometimes they're very painful, but sometimes they are life altering, because what you learn in the win-win situation is you apply it to everything else in your life. It's the whole silver lining attitude, and I think that's a much more balanced way to go through life, because life throws us curveballs that we can't possibly have planned for or expected,
or could plan for, or should plan for.
Right.
In my case, I have to keep saying, do I really need to plan for that inevitability? Because all my planning isn't going to change that inevitability, right?
Nope.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Doggone it.
The animals are such gifts to us of spiritual and emotional growth.
Yes, even the raccoons.
Especially the raccoons. Love your dog.
Hug your horse.
Feed your chickens.
Clean your litter box.
Dance with your goat.
Slither with your snakes.
Howl at the moon.
Hang with your hamster.
Party with your parrot.
Waddle with your walrus.
Outwit your otter.
Cuddle your cows.
Rap with your raptor.
Go chipping with your chipmunks.
Forgive your fox.
While hedging your hog.
We also recommend that you rack with your raccoon.
Gyrate with your giraffe.
Meditate with a meerkat.
Uber with your orangutan.
Facebook with your flamingo.
Ponder with your panda.
Walk with your Wookiee.
Yawn with your yak.
Twitter with your toucan.
Go raining with your reindeer.
Dropbox your dragon.